Welcome to the On Assignment podcast. I'm John Harvey. Thank you for joining us today as we continue the conversation with Taylor Rose. Today, we'll be discussing the negative impact of isolation on the lives of men and discussing some practical ways that you can build real, meaningful community in your life. We'll also take a look at the effect of social media on your identity, the dangers of comparison, and also, how can men break out of their comfort zones to build solid friendships that will help them develop into the men that they were meant to be? So, as we continue part 2 of the conversation today, I hope you enjoy it. Let's get right to it. And that's part of what the data is showing is that a lot of young men are heading in the direction of isolation. Mm-hmm. And you look at the mental health crisis that we have in our country and in the world as a whole, in a lot of places. You look at the elevation of numbers of men who are diagnosed with mental health disorders, depression, all kinds of different dark places in their minds. And you look at where they're at, you can see that a lot of those numbers correspond. A lot of that data corresponds to isolation. Mm-hmm. And people are, as this is well known by now, but people are more connected than ever, but they're more disconnected than ever at the same time. Yeah. And men live their lives in isolation. They may go to work, they may do things, but they don't fully connect at a level in which they're going to experience what you're calling community, connection. We were meant for connection. We were meant for community. And so the mental health crisis, I tell you, there's one of the big things that I saw with my kids during COVID was just the strain of isolation, mm-hmm. the strain of having to wear a mask, go to school. I mean, when they finally opened the schools, they weren't obviously in school for a while, but you're on an online class. It was so hard for my kids. And then the isolation piece where it's like they weren't able to go to their practices, they weren't able to go to their games, and all the things that connected people, a few months before were gone. And then the kind of the long-term impact on that generation. And so, Taylor, with you having kind of walked through that, the COVID years as a young teenager, coming out of that, I don't necessarily want to address COVID specifically and all that's involved with COVID, but the byproduct of that and that sense where people are better connected than ever, but yet they're living in isolation. What are some of your thoughts on things that you've done to help you avoid spiraling into some of these mental health conditions, and also things that you've done specifically to be intentional about building community in your life and trying to keep yourself from drifting into isolation?
Yeah. That period of time, I was 13 and 14 during COVID. That was very difficult because I was in 8th grade. I remember where I was standing in the hallway at Hazelbrook Middle School when we got the notification that school was canceled for 2 weeks. We're like, let's go, 2 weeks. Wow. 2 weeks turned into what was it? 2 years, a year and a half.
Yeah, it was a long time.
So that 13 and 14 are such a transformational forming time in your life. So that was very impactful for me. I mean, that's part of my story. I'm going to be able to tell my grandkids about that, if I survived COVID. No, not really, but
yeah. Well, actually, yeah.
But yeah. But I remember the friends who got screwed up and who didn't, to put it kind of with lack of better words, the ones who had community still, the ones who were playing games together. I mean, that was at a time when I was super into video games. So I still had my crew, my church crew on video games, and we would talk actually every night.
Mm.
You know, we had a few friends over that we trusted when we were still a little bit concerned about that time. But man, during that isolation, we were I was itching to get outside. I was itching to see people I knew. And so I can't even fathom what it was like to be in that position for 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we were kind of, as a family, we made a choice to be done with the isolation period after about the 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And we're like, all right, don't really know what this is, but we're deciding that to stay in community and to stay accountable to others.
Yeah.
So I think accountability is really important too, because it's going, hey bro, you are not acting like yourself right now. Like, what's up? And surrounding yourself with people that can call that out.
So part of the community that you're talking about is going to, like, with the people in your group, in your community, these, you know, the guys that you were maybe playing video games with. Is that what you're talking about? Is like holding them accountable and just by not letting things go unspoken,
Yes,
but actually saying something, hey, something seems off, and actually going deeper. That's what you're talking about when you're talking about accountability here.
Yes.
Okay.
This specific is like accountability of, I was able to really, that was a really cool time. I had a tight knit group of friends at that moment. They're actually off in college now, but we were able to call each other out because
Nice.
we had the relational equity, like you were talking
Yeah.
about earlier, because we had grown up together for, I mean, that was 5 years ago. So we'd grown up for about 6-7 years. And having the relational equity to actually call each other out was so important, because
Yeah.
I was actually younger than all of them. So they all went to college 2 years ago. And that was really impactful for me, because I saw, especially my older brother is he loves peace in the house. He
Yeah.
doesn't like fighting at all. So he was really quick to call that out on me, because that was when I was kind of riled up. You know, it's when you kind of, when you get that energy in you. And
Oh yeah.
so I was called out so many times.
Mm.
I didn't really do the calling out, but it was in that, and receiving the confrontation, receiving the instruction from older brothers that I look up to, you know, in that really helped to form in me, like, okay, I need to take a step back. Again, taking the step back.
Mm-hmm.
So, but isolation is terrible. I mean, you can speak on what you were talking about, idle hands earlier.
Yeah, we were talking about what boredom does to young men, and you know, there's an old saying that says that the idle hands are the devil's workshop.
Yep.
Because if you got nothing to do, you're probably going to do something wrong.
I think that's so true.
You
It's
know?
true in my life.
Oh yeah, yeah. And so yeah, definitely that's part of isolation is you've chosen to not, you know, you've chosen to kind of live a life about yourself and in your own desires, just do what you want to do. And so if there's not responsibility on the table, if there's not something that you're living for, then you end up being bored a lot of the times. And then what do guys do when they're bored now? It's like, they don't go out and go fishing or go shooting or something like that. They go and get on their phone or their tablet and cruise the internet. Right.
Yep.
So that's just, we all know where that leads. So if you're not careful, but I find what you're saying is really interesting. It's hard when a guy doesn't understand. It's hard when guys really don't know how to engage in conversation, and they don't feel comfortable trying to step into a new group of people. Let's talk about the guys that don't necessarily have a solid family structure in place, and they may not have a solid group of friends. What would you recommend to them to kind of help them actually take a step in the right direction towards community and this level of relationship that could impact their life, and they could impact the lives of others?
I believe that it is listening to podcasts like this, and it's renewing your mind, like you said, Will, earlier. It's with actually having people you can look up to, because I think that there's something that stirs in each one of our hearts. Like, even if you are still choosing to be in isolation, it's letting some people in. So find a church. Again, this is sounding like it's so easy. This can be hard. This is a huge risk this is a huge risk to a lot of people to put themselves out there. But what I've seen is people that go from no community and either bad friendships, because I'm one of the people that was blessed with good friendships. Like I said, people calling me out. If you're not in that, I don't even know what happens. So I know that the isolation thing is so key. So find a group, find a church, find a leader you can look up to. For example, Mobilize Men, this podcast is amazing to listen to because you can renew your mind and get the right perspective through these guys. I was listening to one of their episodes earlier today just to get a gist before coming on. And I was like, I'm going to listen to this. This is great. This is a constant daily thing. Does that kind of answer the question?
Yeah,
You
that's
think?
really
good.
good.
That's good.
I feel like that there's part of the cycle that guys get in this transition from adolescence to becoming a young man. Part of the cycle there is that they don't feel confident speaking. No one ever taught them how to carry a conversation.
Mhm.
Like I remember specifically working with my kids on how do you have a conversation with people, and so if you lacked that fatherly advice as you were being developed, and now you find yourself at a lack when like some guys might be thinking, hey, it's going to be really hard for me to step into a new group of people and really connect. Well, first of all, I think what Taylor was saying there is it takes time.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You're not going to go into a place and just be like connected. Connections at that community level take time, but they don't have to be hard.
Mhm.
And you have to give it time and you have to be consistent. And so what I would recommend to the young guy out there who's in isolation and who's having a hard time finding that community is actually find a great church. When I moved from Missouri to Portland in 1991, that was one of the keys to, I look back on it, one of the keys to my transition was actually finding a solid church.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it would have taken me a ton of time to actually find community. But I actually was able to, came to Portland, started going to a local church here in Portland, and they actually had a group of young adults my age that loved Jesus and were walking out their faith. And so the next thing you know, I'm like going to a young adult meeting, and when I'm at the church service, I'm actually seeing guys that I met at the young adult meeting, and then it's like, hey, do you want to go grab some Taco Bell after church? And it's like, yeah, I'll take one of those 59-cent burritos since that's all the money I got. I had $60 when I got into town, so I would eat 2 bean burritos a day, 59 cents each. That was $1.18. So I figured that lasts me a month, right? Mm-hmm. So we'd go to Taco Bell, and then we're talking, hey, what's going on? And through the conversation, you begin to discover what other people like. Oh, you like to backpack? Well, I've never backpacked. I'm from Missouri. Where are you going to backpack in Missouri?
Yeah.
Oh, well, you want to go? Yeah, let's go. So, but just the doors of opportunity that you as a listener stepping out in faith and saying, I'm going to actually go to try this church out. I'm going to actually go and try this, this softball league out or basketball league out. Where can you find connection with people that doesn't require you to actually do anything other than just show up and be a part? And then look for opportunities when you're in that group.
Yes.
Look for opportunities to step in and to serve. Like at any church you go to, there's going to be an opportunity for you to volunteer somewhere. And so where can you volunteer and begin to connect with people? And then what is that doing? You're beginning to develop that sense of my life is not my own.
Mm-hmm.
What we just previously just talked about, right? Where it's like I'm actually living for others and laying down my time, my effort, my money, my energy to actually help others out. And that's where you start. You start by taking a step into a group of people that you don't know, where there's opportunity to volunteer and help, and you begin to help and volunteer, and then you begin to connect. And you'll find that it's not a complicated process, but it takes consistency. It takes an understanding that you're developing something that doesn't happen just by plug in and play. It's like life is more than just what we get in technology. It's about development. And so if you're a listener today and you're like, man, I don't have any community, well, begin to intentionally pursue community, but give it time. Give it several months at least.
That's good.
Because it's going to take time. And then begin to practice not just expecting people within the community you step into to reach out to you.
Yeah.
Because if you're not friendly, you're not going to make friends. And so you've got to be, it's like, it's up to you. You've got to be the one who actually takes the time. And I work with guys on this where I teach them the basics of a conversation, which is the foundation of a conversation is not me telling you guys about myself. The key to a conversation is approaching someone and being friendly and being interested in them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
How can I have a conversation with Will to where I find something out about Will? Because that's a great way to start a conversation. Oh, so you're a firefighter. Well, tell me, how did you become a firefighter?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, really? Okay. So, you're married. How long have you been married? I don't have to do anything other than just ask questions. And so one of the keys to conversations is really about taking the focus off yourself and really engaging at a level to where you're investing interest and energy into getting to know someone else. Yeah. And when you do that, there's a connection there that opens doors for you to either go further in that relationship or to be introduced to someone else. So when you're going into this community, don't expect everyone just to reach out to you and to do all the work of this. You're going to have to actually apply some energy, go say hi to some people. It's going to be awkward. You're going to have to work on remembering names. That's another big one, and so take these practical steps of connections that will get you out of isolation and into community.
That's good.
And then, at that point, you begin to see opportunities arise to where it's like, oh, we need help on the parking team at church. If you in the church context, we need help on the audio visual team, whatever it is there's opportunities, and you can say yes and step into those opportunities and connect even deeper.
Yeah, I agree. I want to address those men that may be a part of a community, but a community that brings them down and doesn't build them up. So if you find yourself in that position, and I agree with everything that you guys said, I think seeking mentorship is huge. Finding a role model, that's huge. But also trust and have the faith that God will bring the right people into your life if you need to walk away from some people.
That's true.
So, and this play on the conversation, I know we're talking about isolation. Sometimes you might need to walk away from some communities and search out others. Now, I'm not saying walk away from those things and seek isolation and be by yourself.
Good.
I'm saying walk away, understand, and we've talked about, I know Taylor hit on this, of thinking about your future when you're making choices. Mm-hmm. And there's a saying that you are who you spend the most time with. Yeah. You will become who you spend the most time with. So if you find yourself, and take a step back, look around, will I be proud of the people that I'm around in 5-10 years? If the answer is no, seek a different community that will build you up, who you will be proud of. Really good. So I don't want people to just run towards any community, because there are communities out there that obviously are bad. I mean, we live in a broken world. So seek kingdom community. Mm-hmm. A lot of times you can find that in churches, but the Lord will provide people in your life to make an impact, and that you will be proud to be around and be proud to call family and do life with. Yeah,
that's so good, Will. And that's so great. There's the saying in line with what you're saying there. It's like, you show me your friends and I'll show you your future.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And there's a test of separation in this transitional season as well. It's a test where God actually does bring men into a wilderness season where they're kind of on their, where they're separated from what they know to be normal and comfortable, and they're taken into a season where God can deal at a deeper level with their hearts. And so, like, when my kids my kids were athletes in high school, like their mom, not like me. They were good athletes. They got her athletic genes, thank God. But one of the elements there is you're on a team of people that you're on mission with, and you're actually in community with, and you're getting pretty deep over the course of a season with.
Yeah.
But that, to your point, there's a test of separation there, because at some point that the group dynamic's going to try and draw you in to a place that you may not want to go.
Mm-hmm.
And I know, especially actually, it's not just for my son, it was for my daughters as well. You have to be willing to say, I'm not going where the group's going.
Yeah.
I'm not going to dive into this part of the conversation. I'm not going to engage with the jokes and where they're going, or even the activities that are happening. I'm going to pull back, and I'm not putting my identity in the group or in the community, but I'm actually separating myself, because I can't do that and be integrous with who I am.
Yep.
And so that's a great point. And so you're looking for communities that represent who you want to be and how you want to grow when you're looking and making that decision.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a great point, because you're the group, if it's not the right group, it will lead you down the wrong path.
Yeah. And that takes being firm in your identity and knowing who you want to be.
Right. Which is we talked about a couple episodes ago about this process of becoming. And so walking in that place of identity is huge. Well, let me say that doesn't make sense. Walking in a place where you understand who you are and what you're about is huge in this. Yeah. And so for there's probably listeners out there who are like, well, what does that mean? How do I walk with a confidence in who I am and what I'm about if I'm not even old enough to really understand that yet, or I've never been told that yet or taught how to do that yet. I think it's a great thing for us to discuss here, because who you are drives what you do.
Yeah.
Right. The who drives the do. And so if you're trying to seek community and you're trying to step out of isolation, there's actually a point in time where you have to really know who you are in the process. It was interesting because on my drive from Missouri to Portland when I was 20, it was 1991. I think I was 21, almost 22 years old. There was one point in that drive, which was like a 30-something hour drive, where I thought, I don't have to be myself in Portland because no one knows me. Wow. There was a lot of shame and a lot of just crud from the past that I was like trying to get away from when I moved from Portland, or from Missouri to Portland. And so part of me was trying to figure out on the way, what do I need to like sweep under the rug and not show people so that I can be someone different in Portland. And I didn't have, it was clearly an immature approach to that challenge that I was facing. How can I build a facade in my life that lets people perceive who I am differently than who I know myself to be?
Yeah.
And so a lot of guys, when they're in their late teens and early 20s, are trying to build facades so that people don't really get to see who they are, but people get to perceive who I want them to perceive me to be. Mm-hmm. And that's so much different than what we're talking about, because as a young guy, it's important that you understand who you are, and that identity piece is how God made you to be.
Yeah.
And so looking at that, how do we, in a healthy way, learn who we are? How do we learn what our identity is if that has not been built into us from a father, a mother, a mentor? And so, Taylor, could you speak into that a little bit on how like a young guy can begin, or even any man really at any stage, but a man who's trying to figure out who he is, or what we would say, what his identity is, how can people figure that out?
Yeah. I believe it comes from value, having a value set of I am valuable. What I do matters. I can actually make an impact, because I all too often I'll hear people my age or a year or two older, and they just go, we can't really actually make a difference in this world. It's like, no,
that's a lie.
that's a lie.
Call that out.
You are literally self-sabotaging yourself.
Yeah.
The sky is actually the limit. The sky is the limit. We are able to go out every day with value, with purpose, with I think that is so good what you said, John. I mean, I was just like, I love this. This is great. This is what my heart burns for. But I think it really comes down to having value in yourself. Because if I'm trying to form my identity, I'm going, well, my identity, I really like basketball. And then you're in high school and you're a good basketball player. And maybe say you go to college and you play basketball in college. Done with college and you didn't get drafted to the NBA. What's next? I'm a basketball player. Well, no, you're not anymore. So then you're just striving to find, well, I play in the 2-on or in the 5-on-5 at my local gym. And I get in fights because guys said I'm not good, but I'm a basketball player. That's my identity.
Yeah, that's good.
How do we remove ourselves from worldly things that don't last? We actually have to have a lifelong thing that we're tethered to, lifelong thing, whether that is Jesus for you, whether that's being a good father, a good husband, a good friend. If I'm going to say this is my mission in life, is to be a good friend and to be one that people can count on. That is actually part of my identity. That's actually ingrained in me. And so when you find out, when you kind of do some self searching, you go through what makes me tick, what do I like, when I hang out with my friends and I kind of do something nice and that feels good, pay attention to those signs. Pay attention to those signs because that's how we're wired. We're wired as communicating beings who like to communicate with others. That's just how we are wired, and isolation is such a sabotage to that because you end up living your life for yourself. I mean, this all is one topic weaving into each other, but I also I wanted to say tear down the barriers because we build walls. Every single one of us builds walls around our heart to protect the tender little boy at 8 years old who probably got yelled at by grandpa. We have to tear those walls down. We have to take the risk of showing people our true heart, our true self, because it will find you. Like you said, John, you said that you've really felt like you could be a different person here in Oregon.
Right.
Eventually it catches up to you. It's, you take the pin out of a grenade and you throw it and it's like, when is this going to explode? Yeah. You really cannot run. I mean, you can for a season but it has consequences. There's consequences in life. There's consequences after life. It's the Gladiator quote. What we do in life echoes in eternity.
Yeah.
And I feel like the longer that it goes, the longer that you try to run from it, the bigger that explosion zone is.
Yeah.
Like the sooner that you can call something out or the sooner that you can bring something to the light, the better it will be. I feel like.
Yeah.
I feel like it's the people that just hold on to that grenade for till the very last second that it's just the most destructive.
Yeah.
So
that's really true. The deeper the lie goes, the bigger the impact of that lie, the more people's lives that it influences. So yeah, we don't want to hold on to these things for a long time. We want to bring them to the light. But when you're in process, though, you may not have it's like you're not in community. It's hard for that to happen. Yep. And so what I'm hearing you guys say is that your identity is more than just what you do. Your identity is more of a core issue and an eternal issue than it is a temporary kind of superficial issue.
Yes.
That you said that it's important that we are tethered to our identity tethers us to something for the rest. It's something that we're going to live out for the rest of our lives. This is something that's universal, no matter. So if I'm here in this podcast room with you guys, or if I'm at work on a job site, or if I'm at the store, this is wherever I go, it's universal. Yeah. If I'm away from anybody I know and I'm by myself in another country, It's just who I, yeah, it's who I am. And the reality of a lot of what we talk about on the show is that anything that we make ourselves to be, anytime we take and form our own identity about who we want to be and how we want to be, and we try and build that ourselves, that ultimately it falls apart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we're broken people who are unable to build identities at that level in a way that lasts for a long time without just flat out deceiving people.
Yep.
Because we're building facades. And so part of what we want the listener to understand as we're talking here is that you receive who you are from your father. There's a DNA code that was the Durlick code that was, from your father and your mother that made you who you are at conception.
Yeah.
Same with you, Taylor. Same with me. And so we receive from one generation to the next, we receive this identity piece. And so who I am is based upon my father and his father and his father. But every one of those pieces is a broken piece that's kind of put together to make me who I am. Mm-hmm. And that's why the inheritance that I get from my father is not that it's a partial inheritance. It's actually a broken inheritance that I received from my father, because he was a broken man passing on a broken inheritance to me, and I'm a broken man passing on a broken inheritance to my son and daughters. And so I say all that because God in his mercy and in his goodness allows there to be an opportunity for us to break that cycle of brokenness and receive a new identity, and to actually receive an identity that he made in us before even conception. Because the Bible says that even before we were made, that he was looking after us, that he was actually part of that process. For I knew you before you were made, before the foundations of the earth. He knew us, and he made us, and he had a plan and a purpose for our lives, and he made us a certain way to be men of strength, to be men who are capable and able to fulfill the purpose and plan that he has for our lives. And in that place, we're able to receive a new identity when we trust in him and what he did through the work of Jesus on the cross. And that's an important part to just bring to light here for our listener who's like, I don't really know how to figure out who I am without trying to just create these facades. Mm-hmm. Because we're not about facade building here. We're actually about stripping away the facades so that the core of who we are can be exposed to the world.
Yeah.
Because when you are reborn in the process of conversion, when you're born again, you're given a new identity.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But God takes the new identity, though, is one where God takes his original plan for you and he restores it and he redeems it and he brings it back to life so that you can truly be the man that he had in mind from the very beginning. And there's a beautiful value in that. God's not just trying to take you and just kind of erase everything about you and create something new, but he's taking what he originally had in mind that the enemy twisted and broke through sin and through shame and this identity that was just completely contorted and twisted. And he just takes it and he makes it new. Mm-hmm. And we're able to live in the fullness of all that he has for us. So for our listener out there, if you're like, I don't know who I am, but I want to, you can find that in Jesus. Yeah. Trust in him. Mm-hmm. And when that happens, though, there's this working out of who you are that Taylor's talking about, where you begin to discover who you are. He even was talking about what are the things that you're taking note of that move your heart, that burden you? What are the things that excite you? Yeah. What are those things that kind of help, that motivate you? You know, maybe you see a picture of a child in another country and you're like, your heart's stirred. I want to go do something. Maybe you see there's a need in your community. Somebody's got a difficulty in their life and they can't take care of their yard. And you're like, man, I want to go mow that guy's yard.
Yeah.
You know, those are all things that flow out of you, not because you're creating some facade that you want everyone to be impressed with, but because God put that in you.
Yeah.
And so this whole element of living in community, having an identity, understanding who you are, and walking as I am, as Will is, and as Taylor is, but we're walking together, all who we are, bringing everything we've got to the table. It's so important because there's so much life that comes from that, so much influence and such an impact. And so that's what I want to make sure that the listener gets a hold of, is that we're not talking about something that we created. Taylor's not talking about something that he put together. His parents kind of formulated this plan for him to be the man he is, although they spoke into that. But ultimately, it's God the Father saying, I had a plan from you from the beginning. The enemy tried to just destroy that plan, but I'm renewing it. And now Taylor's walking, as he's submitted his life to God, Taylor's walking in the fullness of that identity.
Yeah, that's so good. I get this, like, to put an image to it, I see like a core source of our identity.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, we are sons, we are loved, and no one can ever take that away.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
And through that cup being filled, it spills out into kind of what we were talking about of, I want to be a good friend, I want to be a good husband, I want to be a good father. And it kind of spills out to your life, to whereas when you're going to fail in those values that you've set, there's going to be times where you aren't a good friend. You said something wrong, and
right.
you need to go to someone for that. And if that was your core identity, that would break you.
Mm-hmm.
Just like the basketball player.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah,
that was stripped away from him. Someone telling him, hey, you're not good at basketball, that just absolutely breaks him, because that is his core identity. But when we fail in those different areas, those different values that our main source of our identity is spilled into, we can go to our source for comfort. And our true identity is still there. It's not stripped away because we failed in that area. So I think that's kind of where my mind goes with to kind of put an image to it. It's like we have our core set identity in him. It's finished. He did it on the cross.
That's good.
He took it all for us. We are sons, and we can never be stripped away from that. But also through that love gives us these burdens that we have on our heart that become part of our identity, but it's not the source.
That's right.
And so you've talked a lot about the source, and I think that's kind of where like our main identity comes from. And you might be super successful just having these core values on the bottom of, I am going to be a good friend, husband, father. You might get by, but until you find that source, I think you're going to be seeking that source until you find it.
Yeah. Yeah. Because, as a father, your kids leave home one day and it's like a gut punch, man. It's heart-wrenching. And, if that's all you built your life on, then, I mean, I'm still a father, obviously. I'm still a dad, but it's much different now with adult kids. And that interaction with my kids was a special season, and I still interact with my kids. I'm not saying anything, but it changes. And if my identity was into having my kids at home and my interaction with them, then I'd be lost now. And so those types of things do shift, and we have to adjust. But the core that's exactly right. It's so hard for guys to come up with a core identity now, because every day they're confronted with images of successful people out there that show, oh, this guy is the fitness guru, or this guy is the skateboarding guru, or this guy's the Red Bull, extreme sports guy, whatever. You see these guys who,
and their social media makes them good at all that.
Yeah. Right.
Like this guy doesn't fail at any of that.
Yeah.
What's going on?
So let's talk a little bit about the impact of social media on identity for young guys, because I feel like social media is certainly a major part of most young men's lives, and it's important that we're not here to say anything like social media's from the pit of hell or anything, although it could be, but it's just one of those things where how do young guys navigate social media? Because every day they're confronted with images and messages that want to shape them and who they are. Because ultimately, most of what you see on social media is trying to get your money. I feel like that most of the things you see on social media are trying to capture your attention so they can engage with you, so that at some point you buy something from them.
Yeah.
And that's not wrong. I mean, that's business, right? That's what businesses have been doing. I mean, I used to watch Saturday morning cartoons, and on Saturday morning cartoons, there was commercials, and the commercials were trying to engage with me so that I would want to buy something. And so there's nothing wrong with marketing. But when someone is watching social media for hours a day, which many young people do, and many people in general do, the images that are flashing across the screen at such a rapid rate cause so much inside of them to question who they are, question, whether or not they'll ever be successful. And there's such confusion that can create. I'd be interested, Taylor, to get your take on social media and how you've kind of navigated it, and what is some insight that you could give to some of our listeners on that process.
I mean, I believe comparison is the thief of joy.
Yeah.
So I have not done everything right. I'm on social media still, and I think social media can be a very cool, good tool to get, things out there. Like you said, business. There's a lot of business, a lot of ads that roll through there, and you can't make it 3 scrolls without getting an ad.
Right.
Use my creator code to buy this. Revolutionary. This is the world's best. How can everything be the world's best?
Will fix all of your problems.
Yeah, that's right. I'm going to get jacked in 3 weeks. What? Let's go.
I'm in. I'm buying it. Yeah. But there is such a key to connecting with face to face.
Yeah.
Face to face. You can have people on social media but it really is a facade. If we're talking about facades here and building a facade, that is a facade. I'll go to my social media account and, there's pictures from my trips, and the trips are awesome, but not everything on the trip went amazing.
Yeah.
Right? I lashed out in anger at my brother, and we had a nice little fight, but the social media pictures are, what an amazing place. Colorado is the best place ever. Happiest place ever. I was my happiest. I was my best ever. Lie.
Right.
False. Facade.
Yeah.
I built it up.
It's full of facades. That's so good.
So I think putting our trust in influencers is not good.
Yeah.
And putting our trust in people. I believe that a lot of people have good things to say, and you can chew the meat, spit out the bones.
Yeah.
But if that's our only source, like you said, it's like having a good, like what we're talking about with being a good father, being a good friend, being a good husband. If that's a dying power source.
Mm-hmm.
We have like a good ship, we have a good vessel. Then if those are our core values of being a good person, but ultimately if our core isn't Jesus, ultimately if our core isn't I'm a son of God, what is the will? What's the will to live on this planet? What's our purpose? What are we driven by?
Right.
We have to be driven by eternity. We have to be driven by what Christ has done for us on the cross. That even goes back to like social media, like we're talking about. How do I navigate it? Well, I'm valuable. The person I'm looking at through the screen is valuable. Therefore, I'll make time for them, or I'll be able to scroll and not necessarily make time, but I can scroll and everything. But it's really renewing your mind on the things after the fact.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going, whoa, I just saw an image I did not mean to see on there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
How do I not internalize this? Like, okay, whoa, what did I do? Put my phone down. Let's separate for a little bit. Let's maybe go take a breath of fresh air.
Yeah, that's good.
Take a walk outside. Because the algorithm is so messed up. We're men, so we're gonna see women no matter what. No matter how many times you press not interested.
And everything is about views. And so they know, hey, this is an 18-year-old or a 20-year-old man.
Right.
He's probably there's gonna get views on this. So there's people trying to sell stuff, but there's also people that are getting money from views. And that's a big driving force of the algorithm too. That's just so dangerous and bad. And like you said, you can click not interested.
That's the one time I tell people to lie.
Yeah.
lie on your profile.
Your age?
I'm like an 85-year-old
yes, I need to do that.
That's fantastic.
woman.
Wow.
On my
Yeah.
deathbed.
That's the one caveat to lying there. It's good to lie on your profile because then you won't get everything that's pointed at you, right? That that would cause you to
That's good.
trip up. But
Meta.
It is, yeah, it is a facade. And it's like, yeah, you see all these parenting stuff, parenting tips, and then you never see any tantrums. And you're just like, is my kid broken?
Yeah.
What's going on here?
yeah,
And then you talk to them. I don't really know any influencers, but you talk to just every parent. They're like, oh, yeah, that's just part of the threes.
yeah.
Oh, well, then why am I not seeing this? Why does your 3-year-old look perfect? Why is everything just so dandy? And so, it does give this false perception of what am I doing wrong?
Mhm.
Why is my life not looking like this? Why are they smiling all the time? Yeah, we're happy, but I mean, there's some things that we go through as a family. So it's like, yeah. And I love when I see on social media, like real stuff, like people actually disciplining their kids, or there is a tantrum, or people talk about, hey, this happened on our trip. Like what you're talking about.
Yeah.
It's like, it wasn't perfect.
Uh-huh.
Oh, okay, cool. Well,
Yeah.
you're real now.
Yeah, it helps you manage your expectations.
Mm-hmm.
If your expectation is that everything in life should be as I see it on social media, then you're going to constantly be disappointed and struggling with unmet expectations. And no one can meet the expectations in your life, whether it's a girlfriend, a wife, or children, or family, or friends, of the people you see on social media. So yeah, I'm hearing like, for people who are listening here, it's like you want to make sure that you understand that there's an algorithm in place on social media that's trying to cause you to spend more and more time on social media and in engaging with more and more people and influencers on social media.
Mm-hmm.
And so just be aware of that and don't give into that, and be willing to actually put your phone down.
Yeah.
I tell guys, one good thing that guys can do to help their social media is don't take the phone into the bathroom with you.
Yep.
It's so crazy to think about. Like I'm at the airport and the stalls are all, the doors are all closed on the stalls, and you're waiting for a stall, and all you hear is videos in each of the stalls. And this guy's not really taking care of business. He's just in there like taking a break between flights.
We'll be in there for 10 more minutes.
I go to the gym. A guy's getting done with a machine, and you're like, as part of your routine, and you're ready to kind of hit that machine once they're done. And then they sit there and literally they'll sit there for 5 minutes on their phone scrolling through social media after they've done a set. And you're like, are you working out, or are you just? And so be aware of its influence in your life. Be aware of the fact that it wants to kind of capture you and take so much of your time. I love what, Taylor was saying about just be willing to, put your phone down and separate from it. And then also understand that it's good to have a realistic understanding that what you're seeing is not reality and shouldn't shape the way that you want to shape your identity.
Yeah.
Because that's not the image that we should be trying to shape our lives after of social media. Now, do I get fitness stuff on social media all the time? I get workouts, exercises. I love that. Nutrition tips, great. Do I get inspired in my faith by different messages? Oh yeah. So there's plenty of stuff on there where it's like building you up. But when I'm scrolling for 2 hours a day or whatever, that's not helping me out. And so really social media is a big one. And then the comparison and contrasting. There's no greater sabotage to our own personal growth, mental health, our own perspective of who we are than a compare and contrast type of mindset. We cannot allow ourselves to get into this place where we're constantly comparing ourselves to other people. There's only one other person that we want to compare our lives to, and let that guide us, and that's Jesus himself. Because there's no man out there who's worthy of us pursuing to be like them other than Jesus ultimately. Now there's men out there that we want to, I would like to, have certain aspects and value in my life like this guy does. He inspires me. He teaches me. I'm not saying that, but really being careful on who you're trying to. Are you trying to be the, who Grant Cardone or in business, or Cameron Haynes in the bow hunter, mountain athlete type.
Yeah.
These guys are guys that like inspire people, and people get fanatical about it.
Yep.
It's like, okay, yeah, bro, would I love to hang out with Cam Haynes and shoot with him and go hunting with him? Yeah, I would love that. That'd be awesome. But I'm not going to spend a ton of time and money trying to watch what he's saying and do what he's doing and becoming more like Cam Haynes. I want to be, it'd be happy if I'd be a great John Harvey and become more and more like Jesus.
Yeah.
So keep that in mind too, as we're talking here about social media when it comes to comparing and contrasting.
Yeah. And be honest with yourself and what you're walking through. I think that's huge. Like, especially when we talk about putting it away. Like when I was walking through struggling with lust, I had to delete Instagram for 2 years.
Yeah.
Just, it's not healthy to expose yourself. If you're going through process and you're healing and you're renewing your mind, you have to be honest with yourself with what you're seeing and what you're being exposed to, what you're exposing yourself to. Because it's so easy to delete it.
That's really good.
It fixes.
Yeah.
It doesn't keep that stuff in your face. And then
the interesting thing is that you're still here. You're still alive.
Oh, yeah.
You actually survived 2 years without Instagram.
Yeah.
It's a miracle.
And just be aware of yourself. That's what being self-aware. We've talked about that too. It's like being a man, we need to be self-aware.
Yeah.
If you're struggling with something, delete it. You're not going to die. And then maybe after 2 years, I went back to it and I do check-ins. Like you have to check in on yourself. Hey, how are you doing? Am I struggling in this area? Okay, well, maybe I should back off on this, or I'm doing okay, or just be self-aware.
Yeah.
And have the humility to do that.
Yeah.
I think a lot of men don't.
Yeah, that's really good. Taylor, how much time, like, are you on like the different social media platforms? How much time do you like try and, how do you manage your time spent? And I know if you've got a lot going on, that kind of manages it for you, but how would you encourage a young guy who's like evaluating, hey, should I have a social media or not? How much time should I give to it? What would you say to that young guy?
For me, it's like personally, I don't try to spend my whole day on it. Although there are days when I look at my time spent and I'm like, shoot, that was not good. Tomorrow I'm going to be a little bit better.
Yeah.
But I believe it is personal led. If you're like, I am not getting on Instagram. This is from hell. This is a garbage platform. I'm not getting on TikTok. And then you have all your friends that are on Instagram or TikTok. It's like, you don't actually have to be on it, and you don't have to bash other people, because a lot of the world is, and it's a lot of diversity can happen on it, where, like you said, John, where you can get recipes to make healthy food. There is good in the bad.
Yeah.
There is. So for me, I can look at my screen time and go, yeah, that was a little too long.
Yeah.
I try to keep my time within an hour and a half. Now, when I have downtime, that's hard, but I've been trying to get into a better cycle of reading, and because readers are leaders.
That's a big deal.
Readers are leaders, and so it has been a struggle though, because it does draw you in. The algorithm really hooks you.
Yeah.
So I think it's filling my time with other things. Like I love to golf. Golfing is one of my favorite things. I'm a 6 handicap, if anyone knows what that means. But so that's 4 hours right there. And when I'm out on the golf course, I really like to be intentional with people, because it's such a social sport. Again, I love socializing with people. So I'll bring my brother out or friends out.
Yeah.
And then it's 4 hours of
Connecting.
undivided connection.
Yeah.
On a thing that's not screens.
That's so good.
That's good.
Yeah. One of the things that's interesting is that there's the whole element of FOMO, right? The fear of missing out. And people will sometimes be afraid of fasting from social media, which is a great practice, by the way. Even if you're not saying I want to delete my account or whatever, deleting your account is great. I've done that multiple times. It's very good. And then, at some point in time when you're able, you get back on and that's great. But the ability to fast from anything, this would be a whole nother episode, but fasting from social media is really healthy, and it shows you how much time you get when you're not on social media. And if you don't know how to fill that time, then that shows you that you're too dependent on the social media platform. So that's one thing I would say is if you're not sure, fast. Say I'm going to do a week without social media, and if that try 2 days. And if you don't know what to do with your other time, then it's time for you to stop doing social media because you have not been filling your life with things that are going to help you grow and develop. And you're not taking the time to be a steward, like we talked about earlier, of your life. So that's one thing I would recommend is fasting from it, because fasting also helps you understand that life keeps going on and that the fear of missing out often draws us into social media. Like, like even for me, I get a lot of my news now from social media rather than from your old typical news sources. So for me, sometimes I'll be drawn into social media because it's like, what happened in the world today?
Oh.
But it's like, then you're sucked into the algorithm and it's like, like everyone else. But the fear of missing out though is something to where it's a false fear. You're not going to miss out on anything. Your life will still go on.
Yeah.
In fact, you'll probably have better connections, better interaction with people, and you'll have a life that's more fulfilled the less time you spend on social media. So the fear of missing out is actually causing you to miss out on the wrong thing, because you're going into social media, but you're missing out on the book that you could have read, or you're missing out on the conversation or that golf game or that time at the gym or whatever it is, because you spend it on social media. So switch the fear of missing out to being like, the source of me missing out is not social media, but it's life itself.
Yeah.
And so that's a couple things that I would talk to young guys and recommend for them is to practice fasting social media. Allow that to show you the deficiencies where I could really use this time more effectively. And really what you're doing is all of those things are engaging you in and developing you in the areas that we're talking about. If you're on social media, are you actually planning for your future? Are you actually dreaming about the legacy that God has for you? Are you actually able to spend time? What's the path what's the next step for me?
Mm-hmm.
It's a distraction and it's taking you away from planning from your future. If you're on social media, are you actually reading books and talking with people in a way that helps your mental health, to where you're engaging with community and you're stepping into those opportunities? Social media is not community. I'm sorry to say it. It's not true community. And so fasting from it and spending less time on it helps you engage in community even more effectively. And then as far as your identity goes, like we said before, social media is not helping you establish who you are and what you're about. It's actually presenting you with all these different facades that people are putting out there that you're buying into, and then you're discontent, your expectations not met, you have zero confidence, and you're not able to really walk in your true identity because you're so broken by the fact that you're never going to be who you want to be.
Mm-hmm.
So those are some things that kind of when I think about social media that come to mind for encouraging young guys and people in general on their social media use. Now, with that being said, the moving forward decision making, Taylor, so you know where you're at right now.
Mm-hmm.
You know kind of what you got going with work, with what you've got going with commitment wise, with some of the areas where you're volunteering.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you approach decision making for what would be next? Like you mentioned that you've got buddies that went to college and that you've not gone to college, and that may not be a permanent situation.
Mm-hmm.
But how would you tackle the topic of making decisions for next steps?
Making decisions for next steps. This is such a layered question.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah. Well, so when I made the decision to take a gap year after I graduated last year, that was a really hard decision. The process I had to go through, I had to explore my options. I explored a few ministry opportunities that I didn't feel peace about. And then I explored actual schools of where I would have had to pack up and go to school. And so for me, this again, if you're listening and you don't have a relationship with the Lord and you are saying, what is this guy talking about trusting the Lord? I urge you to make decisions that you feel peace about, because there's that inner little thing inside of each and every one of us that if you're making the right decision. You really do know. And it's just tapping into yourself and not making blind decisions. But all that to say, right now I am in a transition period where I don't know where I'm going next. I don't know if I'm going to go to a ministry school. I don't know if I'm going to go to college. I don't feel like I want to go to a 4-year. I don't feel like that's what the steps that I'm taking. But I do know that I'm entrepreneurial. I like business things. I like, real estate. I'm exploring a bunch of options right now. So I'm in this same boat.
Good.
And I think it's being satisfied where I am right now, that I know that 6 months down the road, if I'm still in the same place, that's okay. If a year down the road, if I'm in the same place, it's okay. But I'm making things happen. I'm stepping through open doors. I'm giving, when opportunities are presented to me, I'm exploring it rather than I'm not going to college. Yeah. So I think it is exploring options. And I mean, decision making is really hard. There's indecisiveness, so much indecisiveness in our generation, Gen X or Gen Z, what the heck. But being indecisive is really hard. I used to be incredibly indecisive, and I still am sometimes about my outfits, but but I think it is making the decision and trusting that this is the right decision because I feel peace about it. And this is a risk. We come from a risk taking, like, if you're in America, somewhere down the line, your family took a risk to come to a new place.
Yeah.
Somewhere down the line. So grab hold of your roots on risk taking and going, there is actually redemption if you make the wrong decision.
Right.
Yeah.
Because if you go to college for 2 years and you drop out and you're like, man, I wasted money. Like the kid in the story or in the article that you read to start off with, that it's actually okay because there is redemption.
Yeah.
And while every decision is permanent, your life doesn't actually have to stay in that direction. Like, you see so many people, they go to prison, but they come out of prison with a new perspective. They come out of prison with, oh boy, I just wasted however many years of my life. I got to live out these ones with purpose.
Yeah.
I got to live out these ones with good decision making.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that answers your question.
It's good. No,
maybe one of the layers of the onion.
Yeah.
Is it Jeremiah 29 that talks about, for the Lord has plans for your life? Yeah. Plans, plural.
Yeah.
He has multiple plans for your life, not just one. So you can't just screw it up with one.
Thank God for that.
Crazy decision. But there's grace on every decision that you make. And you're going to make some really bad decisions. There's still redemption.
Yeah.
After that, you'll have to live with the consequences of every decision that you make, but there's still more plans.
And some decisions have more weight on them than others. I mean, you don't just kind of step into, oh, will you marry me? Obviously, right? And so I look at that as like, sometimes a decision moving forward is better than no decision at all.
That's good.
And you've got to weigh the risk. And if it's a calculated risk, do it and see how it goes. I mean, if that's kind of what you've got on your heart to do, I'd counsel you in that direction, certainly. And so weighing the risk of the decision is important. Understanding that decisions are important and making a decision, because if really movement creates momentum. And if you're in that place of kind of like needing to make some decisions, but not wanting to make a decision because of fear of the future, fear of making the wrong decision, well, you need to get past that fear of failure and decision making and make a decision and learn from it.
Yep.
So those are great. That's great input on decision making, because it's so important that young guys are looking at that and they're applying themselves to, where am I headed? Where am I going? Because that's part of vision. And so allowing there to be a dream in your heart, a vision in front of you that you're able to chase after and say, this is what I want to do because this is who I am, and pursuing that's so important. And when you've got that in place, you're not going to be the guy sitting on his computer for 10, 12 hours a day playing video games on social media. You're going to be, what do I need to do in order to pursue the vision that I've got in my heart? So being young men of vision, and also being willing to start making decisions. Mm-hmm. So if you're a listener here and you're like, well, I'm hearing you and I'm like realizing that I'm not even thinking about the future, well, start. If you don't have a vision, make one.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. If you don't have a plan, make one. Mm-hmm. Begin to make some decisions here. You got to start with something. And so begin to apply yourself in some of the things we've talked about today, and that vision will come. You just got to start, though, making a decision to get out of bed in the morning earlier, go to the gym, or even work out in your living room. Make a decision to stop eating garbage and drinking soda and sugar drinks and all that stuff and start eating healthy. Make the decision to steward today for tomorrow.
Yeah.
To where it's like, I want to become the man that woman wants to marry. I want to become the employee that boss wants to hire. I want to become the student that school wants to accept. And you're beginning to create a legacy based on those small decisions that you make today. You don't have to have the whole plan figured out either. That's also another thing where it's like, some people are so, and I can be this way too. As a builder, I like to have the whole blueprint in front of me before I start building, because it's important that I know all the details before I start laying out a foundation. But life's not like that. We don't get the whole blueprint. We kind of have to start building and then see how it goes. And that's where I would love what you're saying about trusting in the Lord, because God knows he's got it all. He sees it all. He knows it all. He's not surprised by any of it. And he's there to lead you and to guide you. But he never guarantees a well-lit journey to where we see the destination when we start. In fact, the Bible refers to the fact that your word is a lamp unto my feet. And that basically there's an indicator there that he'll show you what the next step is, but he's not going to show you the whole path.
Wow, that's good.
And so that's where the faith comes in. Like, okay, I'm taking this step into starting a new business, or I'm taking a step into joining this community. Whatever it is that we're talking, it just takes a step of faith, because God knows the destination point. You have to trust him with that and just start trusting him in the next. Okay, Lord, what's the next step? Yeah. And so we know the basics of it.
Yeah. I like what you said about, you mentioned like looking forward and seeing progress. I think as men, I know a lot of guys might have PTSD, but we should be doing progress reports on our lives. And like, yeah, doing that like 6-month check-in. Okay, in 6 months, okay, let me look back on the past 6 months. What has the progress been? I might still be in the same job, might still be in the same kind of area of life, but what are the things that I've learned? And looking towards the progress, and that's part of having vision and not being stagnant.
Yeah.
Those guys that don't have vision or purpose live in isolation. I don't think they're doing check-ins and seeing progress. Right. I think they're just staying status quo, and they're fine with that. I think as men that are on assignment and want to be kingdom assets, we need to look and do some progress reports.
Yeah.
And say, these are some things that I've improved on. This is where I want to be, and keep going.
That's right.
I like what you said about, you might be doing the same thing in 6 months. You might be doing the same thing in a year, but you're going to look back and see the progress.
Yeah. I think it's like 1% every day. It's like that saying, 1% better every day.
Yeah. There's going to be, if you're on assignment, you have vision, it's going to be progress.
Yeah. And you never improve what you don't measure.
Yeah.
And so that progress is measurable by reflection, by intentionality. And for men out there who are developing and growing, they're intentional in their reflection.
Yeah.
Because you're looking, how am I doing? How's my soul? And you're not just looking at production.
Yeah.
How's my bank account? It's like, how am I doing? How's my heart?
Yeah, that's good.
Why did I lose my temper today with my brother? Why did I spend that much time on my phone today? Why didn't I do that? Whatever it is, you're intentionally reflecting so that you can be like, otherwise you won't know what you want to do different tomorrow to grow. And that's so important.
And when you make decisions, there will be progress.
Yeah.
So that just make sure that you're keep moving forward. You're making decisions.
Yeah.
And yeah.
That's so good. Yeah. So Taylor, is there, if you could leave the listeners like with just one piece of your heart of what God has spoken to you in your 18 years,
Yeah.
what would be one thing that you could leave the listener with today as we get ready to wrap this up?
Humble yourselves, serve a church, serve a community, serve a volunteer network, serve other people, because your life is not your own. That's what I can leave you with. I would say tear down the facade of I'm this, I'm that, I'm an alpha, I got to be this guy, because at the end of the day, you end up short-sighting yourself.
Yeah.
So don't ever try to measure up to something that you're not. Be yourself. I believe there's such a blessing on that when you do actually walk out every day being yourself. That it's really transformational. It's really, really transformational. I mean, I remember when I was coming out of the facade of, I was in middle school. So this is a little bit ago, 6 years ago for me. But when I came out of that, I just didn't even know how to live. It was like, okay, how do I get back to the 6-year-old boy who's sweet, who loves Minecraft,
Right.
who loves going to the park with my husky tool belt, my dad's husky tool belt that's way too big for me, with the little toy hammer, and hitting the play structure and going, I built this, not really,
Right.
but how do I get back to the imagination state of okay, this is life. Colors, grass is green, the sky is blue, the breath, air feels good. So I really, that's what my heart beats for. So serve others, serve a church, serve community, humble yourselves, go low, because people will remember. People won't remember what you did. They won't remember what you said. They might not remember your name, but they will remember how you made them feel. So make people feel good in a good way, in an actual biblical way.
That is great.
Yeah.
It's really good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm super encouraged and have enjoyed the entire conversation. And our prayer every episode is that we're able to provide our listeners with some building blocks with which they can build their lives with. And I feel like there's a lot that we could take out of today's conversation to build with, no matter what season of life you're in. So Taylor, thank you for your time and your investment into our lives. I'm super grateful for it.
Of course.
And as we wrap up, I want to encourage guys to get into community, to get out of isolation. And one of the things that we've got coming up this summer is it's a great opportunity to connect with other men and connect with God is what we call our Trek Northwest. It's a 3-day backpacking trip up into the Mount Hood the Mount Hood Wilderness. And it's a backpacking and getting into the wilderness is like the ultimate opportunity to connect with other guys. It's
Talk about shared suffering.
Yeah,
right?
everything gets stripped down to the basics, right? But it's also a fantastic time of just getting to know guys, giving each other a hard time, helping each other out, whatever it takes. And so if you're interested in something doing like that, whether you have zero backpacking experience or whether you've got a few trips under your belt, go to our website at mobilizedman.com. And on our events page, we've got 3 dates for this summer where we've got these Trek Northwest trips planned. And we'd love to have you on one of them. I think we can take 8 guys per trip, and we've tried to make it real affordable and would love to have you on that trip. It'd be a great way to connect with community, since what we've been talking about that today. As well, on our website this week, we got our store set up called The Shop. And we've got our first T-shirt offering on the shop, which is right here, and I don't claim to be a T-shirt designer, nor do I aspire to be one, but hopefully we put some good designs out with some shirts and hats and
you did good on this one.
Different stuff that would be, the guys would want to represent with. So check out the shop with the shirt, and we'll get some more stuff up on there soon. But really appreciate everyone who's listening to this, who's engaging with what we're doing. Check out our weekly newsletter. It's not really newsletter. It's more of like a a devotional type / encouragement, just another building block for your life. That's really what I'm about as a builder, is I want to give you building blocks to build your life with. And so that newsletter is another great way to interact with each of you guys. So check that out. You can sign up for that on our homepage of our website at mobilizeman.com as well. And then we also want to engage with topics that you guys are interested in. And so if you have an idea for a topic, as we record these podcasts, we're always trying to look at what are subjects that would be engaging with the people we're reaching. And so if you've got some ideas for topics that you could drop in the comment section or send us an email through our newsletter, if we use your topic and you're the first one to suggest that topic, we'll send you a free t-shirt. So, which would be great. So send us your topics for us to tackle. And we appreciate you listening. And we just pray that this week you're able to just have a great week of taking steps forward into the legacy that God has for you as you live intentionally, live on purpose, and that you grow as a kingdom asset, a guy who is strong and capable, mighty man of faith. So until next week, stay on the path.